Hello friends, this is Team Super Simplified and today we are going to discuss the US-Cuba relations. So let's get started. Before starting, let's see what is the context first of all. Why are we here sitting and discussing this particular topic? This is because US President Barack Obama has recently completed his 3-day visits to Cuba, right? And he is the first sitting US president since Calvin Coolidge, who completed his visit in 1928. So you can see there is a gap of 88 years. That is why it is considered historical. And this is also considered a historic turn because US and Cuba had a very strained relations in past, as we have seen since over a half century. This started in 1961 when US had put some economic sanctions and diplomatic ties were cut off from Cuba. So before starting the main topic of the relations, let's see what is the geography of the region. So where is Cuba located first of all? So we should be clear about that. This is Cuba in the Caribbean Sea. This region is known as Caribbean Sea, which is a part of the Atlantic Ocean. And what is this? This is Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico, which is the largest Gulf of the world, right? And these are some of the other Caribbean islands surrounding the region. And some of the important cities of USA around this are this is Florida. This is Florida. You have Texas here. Texas. The map of the state is visible in the logo of Texas Instruments, if you have seen clearly. And this is California. This is California. You have New York here. So these are some of the important cities of USA, and this is the location of Cuba. So let's zoom in into the Cuban region and let's see what are the other countries located there. So you have Cuba with the capital Havana lying here. Then you have Cayman Islands, which are British overseas territory, and I hope you would have heard of Cayman Islands because this is frequently in news because this is a very famous tax haven. This is a very famous tax haven, a British overseas territory. Here you have Jamaica. What do you remember from Jamaica? I remember Usain Bolt. So this is famous for Usain Bolt. Right? He belongs to Jamaica. You have Haiti here. You have Bahamas. Bahamas was the first country where Columbus made his landfall when he started for the exploration of the New World in 1492. Okay, Columbus, Christopher Columbus. So, okay, let's move ahead. And what is Cuba famous for? Cuba is famous for Cuban cigars, Cuban rum. It is also known as the sugar bowl of the world, right? So, a lot of sugar production. And recently, it has become a very famous medical tourism destination uh, because of very good medical services. They have invested a lot in the public medical services. Okay. So, before coming to the contemporary part of the US Cuba relations, let's see how the animosity or the enmity between the countries started and how it grew, right? So we have to go back in the history to trace back the entire problem. So 1898 Cuban revolution took place. In 1898 actually Cuba was a Spanish colony like India was a British colony, so this was under Spain. So 1898 Cuban revolution took place, so the country revolted against Spanish control, and this went on for 2 years, 1898 and 1899. And USA had supported Cuba in this particular endeavor. So revolt against Spain, and US helped the colony to liberate. So that is why obviously US would have some influence over trade and internal affairs, and this went on. This influence was quite visible till 1959 when another revolution took place. So what was this 1959 revolution? Cuba was ruled by a dictator known as General Batista, with the name General Batista, and people were not happy with him. So there was a revolution under the leadership of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, who was his commander. Now, Fidel Castro was a young lawyer, and he revolted with the help of his guerrilla fighters, and he actually took over from Batista. So, but Batista was brought down, and Fidel Castro became in charge. Now, USSR supported Castro because Castro was inclined to communist ideology, and US supplied arms to Batista. So this was happening in the Cold War era, and these two countries got involved in the internal affairs of Cuba, and the things got complicated there. So why was US supporting Batista first of all? There were two reasons. First of all, Batista was loyal to US, so US was having a kind of indirect control on Cuba, and because of commercial interest of major capital class in USA, because Cuba was agrarian economy because of sugar production and other things, and a lot of US capitalists were having their firms and other commercial interests in Cuba. So in order to save those interests, US supported Batista's regime, but Batista did not survive, and Castro took over. Okay, so let's move to the animosity part of it, how the enmity between US and Cuba grew. So this started with Castro regime. So he was having communist ideology, so he was very close to USSR. So the trade relations with USSR grew like anything, and then they started nationalization of the US owned property in Cuba, because nationalization is the main theme of communism ideology, right? And they hiked taxes on US imports. So one side, the trade relations with the US were getting strained, and it was getting, the trade with USSR was growing. So USA was not happy with this, because it was having a lot of influence till 1959, and suddenly the picture was changing. So that is why they were not very happy. So USA retaliated, and this retaliation was economic in nature in the initiation in the initial stages. So this was quite okay. But later they had put some export import restrictions. Then later they have put some travel restrictions on the country, so that the foreign exchange does not, to deprive Cuba of foreign exchange. And then 1961 they had cut off diplomatic ties also, which is okay. So CIA started some covert operations to overthrow Castro, which was foiled. And then some important events which took place in 1961, like the Bay of Pigs event took place, which was a CIA backed plan to overthrow Castro. And the reverse effect took place, because this fueled Cuban mistrust. Cuban citizens were already not having trust on US, because it was interfering in their internal affairs a lot. So Cuban mistrust further grew, and there was a spirit of nationalism which was growing, because the third entity was getting into the internal affairs of the country. So people were coming together. So nationalism was growing in Cuba. Another important event which took place in 1962 was Cuban Missile Crisis, where US attacked Cuba, and USSR came in support of Cuba. And in order to threaten USA, USSR had put nuclear missiles in Cuba, and USA was also a nuclear state. So now this was a standoff which went on for 14 days. So none of the countries were ready to come to the negotiation table and back off. So this went on till 14 days, and after that an agreement came up, where USA promised that it will not invade Cuba, and USSR promised that okay, we'll take back the missiles. So this was Cuban Missile Crisis. But the economic sanctions and the diplomatic ties which were cut off, this went on. And why is there an improvement now? If there was so much strain in the relations, then why an improvement now? Because of the following reasons. Because American attempt to isolate Cuba has failed miserably. Cuba had seen some setbacks in the initial stage, but later it was able to stand on its own feet. It was able to, rejuvenate its economy. And the new generation does not want the same thing to continue. And US wants to improve its image in Latin America, where because of it is seen as bullying a small country. Another reason is from Cuba's side. If you see, then Cuba is losing economically, because it is not able to trade with the world's largest economy. So definitely it is losing on economic front. So that is why they want to come forward and extend an arm of friendship. And then Raul Castro, who has taken over in 2008 from his brother Fidel Castro, who was behind this entire 1959 revolution. So Raul Castro has a lot of pressure to perform, right? So he's thinking of ways to come up with some innovative solutions on different fronts. So this is a kind of low-hanging fruit, because America by itself is extending an hand of friendship. So that is why this is moving forward at a pace which is more than expected. And then what is the progress made so far? This actually got initiated in December 2014, when US and Cuba made a joint announcement that the diplomatic ties will be revived. And what are the signs of normalcy which we are seeing now? The flights have resumed, tourism and travel has taken, has revived. And then US firms are starting hiring, have started hiring Cubans, which was not seen till previous years. And then banking system is processing Cuban transactions. These are some of the signs which by which we can have a confidence that okay, the relations are growing better. And who are the people who are for and against? This is very important. So there is an international support. Majority population in both the countries, first of all, they are supporting it. 90%, around 90% population in both the countries is supporting this move. They are for this friendship. Then the international community is also supporting this, especially the Latin American countries. And this peace was brokered by Pope Francis. He had an instrumental role in brokering this peace between these two countries. There are some pending issues which need to be addressed. And what are those? There are basically two issues. First one is the trade embargoes, which are still in place. So one side you are talking about making the relations better, but all the trade embargoes which were put in 1961, more than 50 years ago, are still in place. You have not done anything significant on that front. So what are you talking about? So this is a main concern. There is a reason for that, because Obama has already promised, the president has already promised that these embargoes will go, but he needs approval of the Congress, which is the Parliament of USA. So that has not taken place till now. Another issue is the Guantanamo Bay issue, which is still under US control. It is Cuban territory, but still under US control. This is where it is. So if you see here, the far end of Cuba, far eastern end of Cuba, so this is Guantanamo Bay. US has a naval base here, and they have a prison also in Guantanamo Bay. So Cuba is telling ki this is our territory and please vacate it. So this has not happened till now. So these are two burning issues which may come in the way of improving the relations. So that's all, guys. That's it from my side. If you like this video, then please do like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you have any topic in mind, please let us know. We will try to take it up in the coming sessions. And one more thing, we received some demand that these slides to be provided for download. So we have the download link in the description section of the video. You can download these slides. And that's all from my side. Thank you. Bye bye.